I asked them to be here as moral support. Excellent people. Yes, she said, I said, do you know Jill? And she goes, I just met her. Yeah, I just met her.
We're excited you're here this morning. We used to do these all the time, and then when COVID happened, they kind of took a pause, but we're excited to have Gail Mueller here this morning. This is a powerful, well, we met at the training of this, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
5 years ago.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, and we're this is just going to be, people, there's such stigma. That's what we want to do, is reduce stigma, stomp it out, and she's going to give us some tools. We're really excited about this. We want to pray because we know the devil doesn't like us all to be here hearing this. So Lord, I just ask that you will speak through Gail in a mighty way. Help us help people, Lord. You love us, and we all have our struggles and pain and hurts, but we just want to be able to help people the way you would have us. And bless Gail. Let there not be technical difficulties, and thank you that this is being recorded so others can see it. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you, Jill. Yes, so my name is Gail Mueller. I live in Nisswa with my husband, and we have 2 grown children. And I just want to thank the Logchurch for inviting me to be here today. The first thing I want to do is start in prayer. So, dear Lord, thank you for each person in this room. Isaiah 42:16, I will lead the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light. And that's really what we're doing here today, Lord, talking about a topic that has stayed in the darkness for far too long. And we're bringing it out into the light. So help us learn today what you would have us learn. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay. So this is Make It Okay. Make it okay is the start of a sentence. Make it okay to talk about mental health. That's what this is about. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. And what is it? It is talking, just talking about mental health so we can break down the stigma. That's what it is. Learning more about stigma, learning more about mental health, that we're all on a continuum. We all have mental health. Where are we on that continuum? Are we really healthy here? Are we somewhere in the middle, or are we out over on the illness side of it? But we all have mental health. What to say and what not to say, that's what we'll learn today, and some resources and support. We are over 10 years old. Is the mic still working? Yeah. And it was started by Health Partners. And then Health Partners joined with NAMI, and NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they came together to create the program. And then locally, Essentia picked it up. And so that's where we work through Essentia in the community. So we have been around for over 10 years. Make It Okay is a community campaign to reduce stigma by increasing understanding and creating caring conversations about mental health and illnesses. So we're going to learn, we're going to talk, and we're going to share today. The key messages of Make It Okay. Mental illnesses are common. Mental illnesses are treatable health conditions. Everyone has a state of mental health, and it varies. The stigma of mental illness and mental health impacts people in communities. Mental health disproportionately impacts vulnerable communities and people of color. Stigma creates shame, isolation, and reluctance to seek treatment. Learning facts and talking openly stops stigma, and that's what today is about. And reducing stigma can improve and actually save lives. So let's start the conversation.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So, how was your weekend?
It was good. How about you?
Yeah.
Meh. What's that? What does meh mean?
Well, with depression, some days are good days and some days are bad days. And yesterday was not one of my good days.
Silence. It makes the mental illness stigma even worse.
Do you want to talk about it?
Learn what to say at makeitokay.org.
Okay, so what we saw that was good there was she was willing to open up, right? She was starting to talk about it. Now, when she said the word depression, got kind of quiet. But then he came back at the end and said, you want to talk about it? That's what we need to be doing. If someone's brave enough to open that conversation, we need to be able to say, you want to talk about it? Oh. Understanding stigma, a negative perception that causes someone to devalue or think less of the whole person. Stereotyping or labeling a person because of their condition. And it's prejudice and discrimination against people with a mental health illness. So let's talk about stigma. What are the words you think about when we're describing somebody who's experiencing cancer? What are some of those words that we say? Yeah, strong, courageous, determined, right? What do we say when we meet somebody who has a mental illness and we describe them? Weak, right, the opposite. Disturbed, lazy, violent. Those are some of the words that come to mind, okay? Selfish. You know that one about violence, only 3 to 5% of people with mental illnesses are violent, okay? Small piece, but those are the ones that get on television, right? It's actually much more common for a person who has mental illness to be a victim of violence. Yeah. So let's get those words on the cancer side moving over to the mental illness side, right? Because those are words that are courageous, determined, inspirational, and generous. Those belong on the mental health side. So let's take a moment to check our own stigma by answering a few questions. Have you or a loved one ever experienced a mental illness? This would be your immediate family or close friend. Who here says yes? Good, every hand is up. That's what we need to start seeing. It's that common, okay? We do know, but in the days gone by, no one would raise their hand because you were too afraid to say I knew someone, or you really didn't know because you can mask mental illness and you didn't really know. I am more comfortable helping a person who has a physical illness than I am helping a person who has a mental illness. Yeah, that's why we're here, learning what to say to the people that have mental illness, getting those skills and knowing how to help. I would see myself as weak if I had a mental illness and could not fix it. That's what we were taught, right? It's weak. You bring it on yourself. You should be able to figure it out for yourself. That's what we were taught. That's what we need to unlearn. People in my community are not caring towards people with mental illness. Now, here I am at the Logchurch, and I want to thank you again for inviting me because your church has mental health ministry. You do care about each other, okay? It's clear. It's clear on your website for somebody who doesn't even walk through your doors. Now, I belong to a church that the pastors are willing to talk about their own mental health. We have mental health concerns in our prayer requests, and we have faith stories every week where people often share their mental health. So we are also a caring community, and that's what I hope all churches will get to that point where they're talking more about it, and it's important, an important ministry in the church. So what is the opposite of stigma? It's acceptance, approval, and respect. And I really like that word respect. It's about respecting people. Why stigma matters? The effects of stigma can lead to shame, isolation, avoiding treatment, discrimination, employment and housing barriers, being perceived as a dangerous or violent person, and suicide. Stopping stigma helps create more caring communities. It empowers people to get treatment, more stable housing, academic success, individual care, improved health. And so what can you do about this? Recognize mental illness as an illness, okay? That's the first step. It's an illness, just like diabetes, heart disease. It's an illness. It's not something you did. Use respectful language when talking about mental illness. Combat stigma and misconceptions with facts when you see or hear them. So if somebody says something that you really feel like that's not really the truth, that, oh yeah, that person was weak, oh yeah, that person made that choice, step in and say, the facts are showing that we've studied the brain now. We know so much more about the brain. So here is the actual truth. It's an illness that's happened. See the person, not the condition, and offer help and support. So it's okay to have a mental illness because many of us do. 1 in 5 adults will experience mental illness, okay? So 1 in 5 people right now, if you see 10 people, okay, a couple of them have mental illness. Now in Crow Wing County, we're actually 1 in 4. We have a higher incidence. I met with Essentia Health this last week, and I talked to them about that. And there could be a variety of reasons. One of them could be a hopeful reason, that we're talking more about mental health and more people are coming forward. But if you just saw the NPR document last week, you know that 80% of our mental health care people in Minnesota are in the cities. 80% of our counselors are down there. And you'll also know that when we live in our smaller communities, everybody knows each other. And so you have people not wanting to go into the counseling office and keeping them back. And what that breeds is isolation and more mental illness. So COVID was rough, but one good thing that came out of it was people going online to get mental health support. So that means that counselor in the cities you have access to. That means you can sit in your house and still get that help you need. So even if the stigma stays high and we work really hard to break it down, you do have ways to get that help in the privacy of your home. And that's a good thing that came out of COVID. Yeah, more people with mental illness than have diabetes. We are taught as children about illnesses like colds, broken bones, surgeries, but mental illness isn't discussed. Mental illness should be discussed like diabetes to be recognized as a normal illness, okay? Or a heart disease, or any of the other illnesses. It's right there with the others. Let's talk about some of the mental illnesses. There's 11 of them listed up here. The most common ones are anxiety and depression. PTSD, we used to think that was just military people, but that's not the case, is it? Anyone can have a trauma. And sometimes people say, but somebody else went through the same trauma, and they don't seem to have mental illness around it. And I said, if it's a trauma to you, then it's trauma. All of these are treatable, every single one. Some are more serious than others, but they are all treatable. Myths and facts about mental illnesses. The myths are it's a lack of willpower, character flaw, weakness, attention-seeking, exaggeration, or simple stress. The facts are mental illnesses are medical conditions that are biological in nature. Genetics plays a huge role. If you've got people in your family, you should be watching it. Environment, brain physiology, traumas, triggering events. There's a lot of factors that go into it. It's complex. But those are the facts. And if you were to Google Mayo Clinic depression, you'd see this PET scan show up. It shows that your brain actually changes. It looks different. You see the one on the left? It's depressed, it's darker, it's not receiving information, it's not processing information. The one on the right is not depressed, brighter, lighter, and moving forward. This really helps a lot of people ask for help because they go, oh, it's like a broken bone. I can see it on an x-ray. Yes, if you had a PET scan, you could see it. You could see the change. And that really gets people to go ask for help. The reality is that, can affect anybody. Your loved ones, coworkers, neighbors, friends, leaders, celebrities, athletes, communities. It has no boundaries. Gender, ethnicity, no boundaries. Here's some famous people who have stepped up. And two I like to highlight are Michael Phelps. Michael, of course, famous for his Olympian swimming. I mean, he's the most decorated Olympian. But then he was in the news for something else. He was in the news for substance abuse. And I think we need a lot of compassion when we hear that, because a lot of times it's because there's something underneath that. And for him, it was anxiety and depression. That's why he was doing that. What's so great about Michael is that he's devoted his life to mental health. He has Talkspace, which is an online service. And if you look at Michael's name, he has the word help embedded in it. And he's like, yes, God really, if you Google him, he's got a faith story behind this. And so he is a great role model for all people. The other one I'm going to pick out is Lincoln. Here he is in the middle of the 1800s, and he's asking a group of people to be his support group and stay around him to protect him, because he had thoughts of hurting himself. And he was humble enough to do that. I think what a wonderful role model that is, of asking for help and humility. And so he was doing that 150 years ago. My picture's up here. My picture's up here because I have had mental health things happen in my family and with me as well. So that's what I want to share with you guys right now. When I was in my 30s, I lost 3 cousins to suicide. You know, they lived in another state. We had only met them a few times, and we didn't even talk about it. We just pretended that didn't happen. That's what was going on back then. You just didn't even talk about it. Well then, on January 4th of 2010, I lost somebody close to me by suicide, and that was my brother. And he always had a smile on his face. He was always so lively. He was in nature all the time, and that was his medicine. That's what he was trying to fix, his depression and anxiety. And what we found is that we have anxiety and depression in our family. It was clear from those 3 cousins dying. If I had had 3 cousins die of heart disease, I would have been studying heart disease. I would have been saying, that runs in our family. We need to know what's going on. We need to learn everything we can about that so that we're prepared if that happens, or we're managing our bodies so that it doesn't get triggered. But we didn't do that. And so Glenn passed, okay? He lost businesses in the Great Recession, and that wasn't what caused him to die. It's something that with mental health, you have to ask for help all along the way and manage it. And then you can have a tipping point, and that was his. He not only left us, but he left behind 4 young children, ages 8 to 18. So when that happened, not only lost him, but knowing those kids didn't have their dad, I went into my own depression. Okay? After he died, I wasn't eating right. I wasn't sleeping. I was ruminating over all those what ifs, because a death by suicide is different than the other deaths. You have all these what ifs. What didn't we see? Why didn't he ask us? Why didn't he trust us? All those thoughts over and over and over in my head. I couldn't get rid of them. I went to God first, right? Because there he is. He's right there for us. And I said, I am suffering. I am starting to deal with what he had at such a high level. And I talked to him all the time. I started with him early in the morning, and I talked to him through the day. And that always helped me. But he also told me about the one another's. And he said, I didn't make just you and me. I made all these people around you. Go to them. And I learned from my brother not to bottle things up, because he never told anyone. He never told his doctor. He never got any help with his depression. And he probably had it since he was young. So I told my husband right away, and he's been a huge supporter in my life. I told my sister. I told my pastor. The great thing about those 3 people is they all knew enough about depression to tell me to go talk to my doctor about it. He said, we come alongside you, but you need to go talk to your doctor too. So I did. That's a great place to start, right? Because you already know your doctor. And I told her, I went in and I said, this happened, I need help. And she said, let me give you the PHQ. So this is the PHQ, the Personal Health Questionnaire. How many of you guys have filled one of these out? Good. This is supposed to be common now. They'll ask you a few questions, and based on that, maybe they'll have you, go through it. When you get your real diagnosis is when you have to fill it out honestly, right? If you don't, it's like a piece of garbage. But if you fill it out honestly, ask you 9 questions, then they get a diagnosis for you, a starting point. And so you talk through each one. And my doctor said, you have a moderate depression. You absolutely do. And she said, these things you're telling me, I'm not a counselor. So even though I'm a doctor, I can't help you with all those thoughts. I'm going to recommend you go for some counseling. And I said, and this was 14 years ago, and I said, I've never been to counseling. I don't know what that is about. And she said, they will help you process those thoughts, and do that. But she said, in the meantime, let's start a list of things you should do every day to get your mental health back. And she and I brainstormed, but then she told me to continue that. And so we came up with a list of things I was supposed to do every day to get my health. So here I'm on the continuum, right? I'm in the middle. I'm headed that way. Let's get it back to where it's healthier. So spend time with God. Know that He loves you always. Just start there. Have Him with you through the day. Exercise. Find something that you really like, okay? That makes such a difference. And I like biking, and I live on the Paul Bunyan Trail, so I'm very fortunate. Sleeping. Develop a routine. Get that room dark. There's a little booklet. I've got some things from Make It Okay with me today. There's a whole list of things that you can do to help you with your sleep. Most important, get off your devices and just have that quiet, maybe some white noise. It's dark and there's a routine to it. Eat right. It's so important what we put in our bodies. Junk food, it actually inflames our brains. So not to, this is, if there's ever a time to eat healthy, it's when you're dealing with mental illness. But eat healthy all the time. Talk to your family and your friends. Spend time with your pet. Volunteer. When you volunteer, you take the focus off of you and onto other people. It's a healthy thing to do. Monitor the effects of social media on your mood. So for some people, that goes way to the top. Like they're doing a lot of comparisons, they're spending so much time, it's making you feel worse. So that's individual for each person, but that's definitely something we need to address, and young people especially, but all of us. Make to-do lists, keep track of your goals. Take vitamin D every day. They're saying all of us, because we're inside so much, working on our computers, whatever we're doing, we all need to be taking the little vitamin D pill all through the year. And for 30% of us here in Minnesota, we should be using light therapy. So we have seasonal affective disorder. In my family, every person in my family has seasonal affective disorder. Now, a light therapy looks a little like this. It's just this little box. Back on the table, I've got a more updated version of this that plugs into your computer. They're only $20 now. They've come way down. They're 10,000 lumens, and they simulate the sun. So it shines on you. Earlier in the day is better. If you use it after 3, it actually keeps you up at night. You don't look at it. You just let it shine in your face for 20 to 30 minutes. It actually gives you energy. If you don't have seasonal affective, it doesn't mean anything. And people will say, well, those things, if it's 10,000 lumens, these are clinically proven to help. And so especially for us in Minnesota, we really need to be using these through the winter, but whenever it's a cloudy day, it makes a difference. Journal, and in that, the things that are troubling you, but also the things that you're thankful for. Listen to music that uplifts you. I know when I was going through my depression, I had Overcomer by Mandisa. That was my fight song. It kept me going, and that's just really important to have music in your life that's uplifting you. And then to get a daily dose of laughter is important, however you want to get that. Okay, so soon we'll be able to say that. Okay, and I couldn't have a slide presentation without Monty in it, so we just got a new little rescue dog, and oh, he's just the cutest little rescue dog. But our pets mean so much, and if you don't have one, tether yourself to somebody else's pet for a little bit, right? It can be a cat, it can be a hamster, it can be anything. But dog is God spelled backwards, so I'm all about the dog. Okay, so I was doing those. Oh, by the way, I have these cards out back because If you want to take my card of what I do every day and add to it, to customize it for yourself, do that. It really keeps me on track. I look at it every day, I'm like, okay, I did those things. I did those things. Seeking counseling, so boy, I'd never done that. So you pray about who am I supposed to go to. I do go to a Christian counselor. She prays with me at the beginning and the end. Sometimes she has Christian stories that help me understand myself better. But I do believe that it doesn't have to be a Christian counselor. I think God uses all people. But this was like a key unlocking to my depression, was therapy. It was that significant. Now, you might go to one and you're not really a good fit. That doesn't mean they're a bad counselor. They're just a good fit for somebody else. I found one that was a good fit for me. You can do it. I've done both online and I've done in person. They both work. It's good. It's all good. For now, I have an in-person in Brainerd, and when something comes up in my life, I will go see her, and she will help me to process it. It is very comforting for me to have someone in my back pocket like that, so I go to Christ, and then I go to the one another's. And this is huge, guys. If you haven't done or know someone who's struggling, therapy is huge. And you guys have Naomi. Yes, and you have your whole ministry. You guys, I wish every church was like the Logchurch. You guys are the leaders. The simple act of talking changes your brain chemistry. And we all kind of know that. If we've had a bad day and we tell someone, we just feel better, right? Yeah. And so that's what therapy is, only magnified. And they can help you process those thoughts. The key is you have to be honest with them and trust them. If you don't, actually, I don't believe therapy works. Why? Because you're not telling them everything that's in your brain. How are you going to process something if you haven't told it to them? Okay? So therapy is key. Now, for some people, the third step is medication. Okay? Lots of different medications out there. And if you have a mental illness in your family and someone is taking a medication, that's the place to start, right? Start with what's working for them. And then, if that's not working, try another, okay? And it is a process. It's key that you are working so hard to get your chemistry right. If you take other alcohol, marijuana, put those in there, you're undoing your brain chemistry again. If you're doing those things, you should be really talking to your doctor about that to say, how is this affecting this? Can I even be doing any of that? And you don't want to go off your medication unless you and your doctor decide you're going to wean off, or if you ever will, or how much. Don't do that on your own. So many times you'll say, I feel better. Yeah, but don't take yourself off. And there is no magic pill for anything in life, and this is no different. This isn't going to do all the work. This is just part of it. Sometimes you're on medication right away just so that you can do the therapy, that you can do the daily self-care. Sometimes you have to start with this. But more typically, it's the third piece. Self-care, is that enough? Add the therapy, add the medication. People experiencing a mental illness do not choose it, but we can choose to help and get better. So, that's what we were taught. Like, you chose this. Like, this is something you did. No. I've had one. No, I didn't choose that. No. But I can choose to get help and recover, and we all can. We can all choose to get help and recover. Seeking help is empowering and it's courageous, okay? And it's kind of what Pastor Troy talked about today. With vulnerability, be vulnerable. That's the courageous thing to do. And it will empower you. You will get healthy. That's the whole thing, is it's treatable. You don't have to live that quality of life. You don't. It's treatable. It's hard work, but you can make it treatable. Okay, so this picture's up here because for 10 years I went into the middle schools and I presented to 8th graders during health class about mental health, and I shared my personal story with them. And I think that was what was important, is to say, like those famous people, if somebody famous can step up and share their lives, so can we. And here I am. I'm doing that in front of you. Can you do that in front of your parents? Can you do this? Can you speak up and ask for help? So 50% of mental illnesses are before you're age 14. 75% of chronic mental illnesses are before you're 24. Why is that? Your brain is changing so much, you're going through all these transitions. That's why it typically can be diagnosed that early. Okay? So that's why I felt so strongly after my brother died, God can do good things with horrible tragedies. And what he was going to do is have me go talk to those kids and make sure that they were learning about it when they needed to learn about it, right? When they're young. The kids are great listeners. One thing I always had them do was take out their phone. Of course, those were put away, right? But I said, for this one exercise, your teacher's given me permission to have you take out your phone. And I would have them scroll through their phone and pick out a couple people, 3 people that they could call in the middle of the night if they were in trouble, so that they were already thinking about who that was, not waiting for the episode or the trauma that's happening, but do it now, you know who they are. And so they had those, they knew those. And there's some really good apps out there that help with that too, that they just push a button and right away it calls their mom, right away it calls their dad, right away. And then, of course, to have 988. And we've had that for less than 2 years. It came out in July of a couple years ago. 988 is so critical because those people are actually trained in mental health. And 911, how could we expect our police people to know all of this and to manage all of this? They couldn't. And so now 988, they know what to do. 90% of the time, they can talk it through on the phone. There doesn't even have to be somebody to go out. They help people process their thoughts. They're trained in this. And the kids know, if you feel like, I had one girl stand up once in class and say, I have no one. I have no one. And I did a little prayer in my heart, like, you have God. He's there. But you have this person. They're there 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. You have them. You have them. I also share with the kids about the words good enough. And only one thing is perfect in this world, right? Jesus. He didn't make us to be perfect. He made us good. And he made it and was very good, but not perfect. So a lot of people have been taught to be perfectionists, and it's still happening. And so excellence is good, but perfectionism is really self-abuse. So I really tell them, you have these little tapes going around in your head, and this is for all of us. Change those tapes. If you still have that perfectionism thing going on, the words good enough are critical to have in your brain. You're good enough. What you did was good enough, you know? And it's not what you do, it's who you are. You're good enough just the way you are, just how you are right now. You are worthy. The reason I show you guys this slide is I have kids come up to me after class and they'd say, I'm a burden. I'm not worthy to get well. I was really surprised to hear that. I'm not worthy to get well. So I started carrying this with me. And I'd show it to them, and I'd show it to you. What is this? $5 bill. Do you still want it? Yeah. Do you still want it? Still want it? Yeah, you still want it. Well, this is us too. We go through a lot of stuff in our lives. We go through traumas, we go through divorces, we go through breakups, we go through bullying. We went through COVID together. We're pretty beat up. But we are still valuable. We are always valuable in God's eyes. We are always worthy. Always. They need to see that. We all need to see that. Ask for help. That was the key of everything I presented to the youth, and it's what I'm saying to you today, too. Ask for help. That's what you need to do. Don't listen to the old way that said, go fix it on your own. We hadn't studied the brain. We didn't know the truth. Now we know the truth. You have an illness. If you had any other illness, you'd be asking for help. You need to ask for help. Ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? I always cover this when I talk about mental health. Well, because I've lost my brother, right? And if you don't treat your mental illness, this is the worst case thing that can happen. And we are supposed to ask people, are you thinking about suicide? Oh my gosh, we were never taught that. We were taught, don't bring up that word. That makes it worse. It puts it in their head. All the studies say no, that's not the truth. Bringing it up will comfort them for two key reasons. They'll be so happy that you cared enough to ask such a hard question. And they also will feel comforted in knowing you have some idea of the pain they're in, that you would ask it. They will be comforted by it. I have since asked a few people this question. And I tell you, I had to practice saying it so that I could do it, because it's so foreign to us. Remember when we didn't talk about cancer? We didn't talk about the cancer word. This word has done that. That's what we've treated it like. And that is not what you want to do. If they say no, are you thinking about suicide? No. You say, I had to ask because I care about you. I love you. I had to ask. If they say yes, you say, I love you. I care about you. Let's find out what's going on. And you go with them to the hospital or to a place where you can get help. Okay? You do need to ask it sometimes. And it's a good thing to do. But like I say, I had to practice it because it's that hard to say. What are some myths about suicide? Most people who are thinking about taking their lives want to die. The fact is, most do not want to die. They just want the pain to stop. Okay, I see some heads, yes. It's so painful. Think about the part of the body that's not working. It's their brain that's not working. You want to catch any illness. It's never too late, and it's never too early to catch any illness. But when you catch any illness earlier, you're not going to get to that point where that brain is in so much pain and struggling so hard. You're going to work through that so that you don't reach that point, okay? And ask for help. And so they don't want to die, but it is so painful. They truly believe there's no other way. They feel that there isn't. They're in a pit, and they feel like they can't get out of there. We know we've got God, right? Like He's going to pull us out. But the one another's help as well. And so to tell someone what's going on in your brain is important. And if they're not saying it, you ask it. Another myth is once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. The fact is, suicide is the most preventable kind of death, and almost any positive action may save a life, okay? I underline the word may, because we're still not responsible for the life of another person. We're not. And as a suicide loss survivor, the words my therapist told me first and foremost when I went to her were, you all did the best you could with the information you had, and you are not responsible for the life of another person. You're not. But anything you do may make a difference, so you try, and you do. I feel strongly for loss survivors, and so Jerry, a friend of mine who lost her husband, I lost my brother, we lead a support group. It's at the Arboretum, the first Tuesday of every month, in their fireside room. And we have loss survivors from the area come and just share their stories, share whatever. Just know they're not alone. That's the key. You're not alone. There's other of us. And Jerry and I aren't counselors. We're trained by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to be facilitators. But we're listeners. We're listeners. And that's a safe place for people to share. Okay? And like I say, people know they're not alone. This has happened, right? And actually, suicide rates are increasing. And 80% are men. Okay? So we need to prevent it, and that's why I'm here. But we also need to support those who are loss survivors. And we can help each other. So I want you guys to know that's out there. I know your church took one of my flyers. You were the first church to take the flyer in addition to my own church. You guys are so good. But do know that that's there for people, okay? We're going to be there. Understanding common symptoms: difficulty thinking, concentrating, or remembering, delusions or hallucinations, impulsiveness, persistently sad, lack of interest or pleasure. For me, with depression as a mental illness, lack of interest or pleasure was my first one. I just lost interest in things I used to be interested in. That was my first cue. Like, I go skating with you, Sue, and I didn't want to skate. I didn't want to ice skate. That was a huge clue to me. That's one of my favorite things to do. I don't want to do it. I don't even want to bike. So these symptoms are for a lot of different mental health conditions, the 11 that we showed earlier. So you'll have some of these, some grandiose plans: pounding of the heart, sweating, dizziness or trembling, changes in sleep, energy or appetite, and tension in the jaw or body. A lot of times when you have a mental health condition, it goes into the physical. You start feeling it in your body, right? If you know a young person who's got their stomach tied up at knots all the time, maybe it's not gluten issue, maybe it's anxiety, right? So to know, it can move into the physical body. And just to be aware of your own body. What's changing? What's changing? 2 weeks. This is in red. That's your red flag. If these symptoms are going on for more than 2 weeks, that's when you want to go and see the doctor, because that's more than just being sad or kind of our normal up and downs. That's your guideline, is the 2 weeks. All right, we've got 4 people here: James, Maya, Kim, and Leo, and we're going to see where they're at on that mental health continuum. James actually has bipolar disorder, which is considered one of the more serious mental illnesses. But he's in the optimal part because he is getting social support, staying active, he's on his medication, he's getting his therapy. He's doing everything he can to manage it. There's no cure for mental illness, but you can manage it, and it's so treatable. So there he is with a pretty serious condition, but he can do it because he's following everything he can to manage that. Maya's doing the same. She's got depression, which isn't considered as well, it depends what level of depression you have, but she's keeping hers at bay because she's staying connected and she's doing self-care. So she's not doing therapy or meds. She doesn't need that. She might need it, but she's managing it that way, and she's also in the optimal area. Now, Kim is battling an eating disorder. She's feeling isolated and overwhelmed, and she's unsure how to get care. So that's why she's in the lower part on the mental health continuum. She's not getting treated. She's not getting the help. And so she can rise up, she can move into the other quadrants, but because she's not getting the help right now, she's not there. Leo is feeling anxious, stuck, and lacking purpose and not sure what to do to feel better, okay? And this is where, he's in the lower. Anxiety isn't considered one of the harder ones, although it can be. And I always say some anxiety is good. It spurs you on to do things, right? But when it starts to become debilitating, then it's moved more into the mental illness area. And Leo's in that lower quadrant because he's not sure what to do. And a lot of people turn to alcohol. And a lot of people now are turning to marijuana because it's legal. And these are very high-risk things. This is where we need to say, no, answer's not there. Go to God first, and then go to these one another's who are actually going to treat you with the right medications, the right therapies, and the right self-care. So recovery is absolutely possible. We've talked about these: the social support, the therapy, treatment, medications, nutrition, physical activity, the self-care. We have our churches. You guys have your community. How great is that as one of your support? One of the ways that you protect yourself, right, is having your church community. And being vulnerable. Again, what Pastor Troy said, be vulnerable with each other. Share those things. That's how we get well. Take it out of isolation. It's been there way too long. We've done all that guilt and shaming stuff, and it was never the truth. The truth is your brain has an illness in it, and we need to mend that. There are some tools that you can get at Make It Okay, so if you go to our website, you can pick up some more things to read and help with mental health. Tips for supporting someone, stop the silence. That's the number one. Don't be quiet on it, especially if they bring it up. Oh, wow, they trusted you. Be nice and listen, keep in contact, don't ignore it, offer help. Keep the conversation moving and encourage self-care and resources. Share some of the things that you've learned today, but I also say it's not a one-time conversation. You kind of want it to be. It's like, okay, we talked about that. That wouldn't be the way if someone had cancer. You would be checking in, you'd be talking, seeing how they're doing. That's what you want to do with mental health too. And I just start everything with, I care, I love you. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm asking the hard questions. That's why I'm next to you doing this. And so, listening is key. So learn what to say and what not to say. This is kind of the core of Make It Okay. Well, what am I really supposed to say or not say? Do say, thanks for opening up to me. Like, thanks for sharing that with me. You know, I'm glad that you shared that. Do you want to talk about it? How can I be there for you? You don't have to go through this alone. I'm here. I'm alongside. I sign that so much in text. I'm alongside. I'm alongside. How are you feeling today? Can I drive you to an appointment? Something very specific maybe they need help with. That's just going to make that day a little higher quality. Are you getting the care and support you need? Okay. And you guys think of other helpful language, right? I just always say I care, because that's really what it is. I care. That's why we're having this hard talk. But I don't want to make it a hard talk anymore. I want to make it a normal talk. I want this to be normal, because 25%, if I saw 4 people, one of them is dealing with a mental health condition. Like, we need to be talking about that. That's how common it is. Don't say, it could be worse, snap out of it. We all have those days. That minimizes how they're feeling. That's not it. Yeah, we do all have those days, but this is different. This is not sad. This is more than sad. We all have those days. Pull yourself together. Quit exaggerating. I hate it when people say, oh, that drama. Oh, I just hate that when they say that. No, this is their reality. They're trying to describe it to you. What's wrong with you? Oh boy, what's wrong with you? My brain is sick. Try thinking happy thoughts? That's not. I mean, it is positive thinking is important. Absolutely. It's just one piece. Other language, yeah. There was an active shooter again last week. His name was Ethan. And that morning he said to his dad, I need to go to the doctor. And his dad said, suck it up. That's what happened there. And it's in a text, and that's the truth. And honestly, that's what we were taught. We were taught that other side. We were taught that. But we have to unlearn that. That's not the truth. And it's killing people. So, we need to know what to say, how to say it, and to be brave. And that takes God's strength, honestly. It does. It's hard. So you say, God, help me to say this. I want to reach out. I want to come alongside that person. Help me to do that.
So in those situations, what helped for me is to have someone say, wow, I know you're having a hard time today. What can I do for you? Do you need some help with anything? And it might be hard for me to say anything because I'm still going, oh my gosh, I was expecting you to go, oh, come on, lazy bones, what the heck's going on here? But it helps. I might say, yeah, could you maybe come over and maybe do some dishes? Or would you be okay with sitting next to me today? What I need is for someone to maybe just sit next to me while I just sit there and, because it's comforting sometimes to have someone by me, but not talking to me. Then I get too anxious and I worry about what they're thinking, and it doesn't work very well.
Okay. So she's just describing her conversations, right? And a lot of people are not on board, so she doesn't always have someone there who's willing to listen to just the little bit she's trying to share. And we can't read people's minds, right? We can't. So you have to bring it up. Or if you see a change in someone, then you bring it up. So this is the scenario. You notice that your friend has seemed detached and disengaged during the past few months. They rarely come to church, and when they do, they don't say much. You're concerned about them. You ask them, when you're alone, one-to-one, right, if they're okay. They say they have been really depressed lately. What do you say? Wow, this person said the word depressed. Good for them. They could actually say it. So what do you say next? What do you say next to this person? I'm so sorry. I am. I'm sorry that's happening, but thank you for opening up to me. I'd noticed that you haven't been your usual self, and I'm here to listen. Boy, I remember when my brother died, I was talking, I was telling this therapist, you just sit in sessions and just listen to me. And I was like, thank you. That's all I needed was just listen to all this stuff. And then at the end, she would help me process the things that she knew she could help me with. So it's so much about active listening. Repeat back what you heard them say, okay? Then they know they were listened to, right? Have you talked to your doctor lately about how you've been feeling? Are you seeing someone? That's an important question. One of the risk factors, they say, in rural Minnesota is that our families are fairly connected, and we think we can do it within our family and not go to the professionals. And that's not always the way. In fact, it's not. Steer them to their director or to their doctor. Direct them there. That's what my husband, my sister, and my pastor did for me. They came alongside me. They walked that with me. But they said, go see your doctor. Smartest things they could have said. And that's what I want you all to do too. If you've got a friend that's really struggling, stay alongside with them, but make sure they're seeing a professional. It's critical. And my famous, I care. This one starts with, I care about you, and I'm concerned, and I will do whatever I can to help. So if you only remember, for me, it's always, I care. I just have to start with that, you know? Then they know your intentions are just to love on them, right? So these are resources. We talked about going to your doctor, check with your health insurance plan to make sure that you've got, you know, if you go to a therapist, check and see that you're, you know, going to be covered. I know Naomi here, the coverage is great. Go to your EAP and the faith community. Rely on each other. Be talking. And that's what Pastor Troy really encouraged today to you guys. Be vulnerable. Tell each other. Crisis lines, 988, since that came in, I'm just all about that, because how many things can we remember? But you can put these in your phone too. The veterans, they're specific to that. We have specific to LGBTQ. We have specific to farmers. You know, there's some specific helplines. But if you call 988, and I was just talking to somebody who works with them, they said if you say my situation here is for a veteran, then they get you that person, okay? Or any of these. They'll get you that person. So you can always start with 988. Don't feel like you have to know all this other stuff. And I work as a volunteer. Everything I do is volunteer. NAMI is great, National Alliance of Mental Illness. Now, we don't have a chapter up here. American Foundation Suicide Prevention, I volunteer with them as well. And we're here. We're just little individuals scattered around. We're not a bigger organization like they have in the cities, but we are here. This talks about taking the pledge to say, yeah, I'm going to ask for help. And I'm going to learn how to talk to people with mental health conditions. I'm what they call an ambassador, and we need more of us. So we train you, and you can go to churches or any organization that will listen. I wear the OK button. I'm real high on this because I wear it around, and people say, what's that? And I say, oh, well, that's a shortened version of make it okay. And there's other buttons out back, too, that say make it okay. And they said, what? You know, and I said, make it okay to talk about mental health and mental illnesses. And then that might spur more discussion. Or it might stop there, but they still know, like, I want to talk about it. come back to me if you want. I just want us all talking about it. So I hope those buttons are gone today, because they're out back with some other things. And I'd love to see the buttons gone, because put them on. And when you're ready, pray about it. I mean, like, you need God's strength to do some of this stuff. And just see how he's going to use it, right? So, yeah. There's more ways to learn about us.
A few years ago, I lost a job because of stigma.
Stigma, it prevented me from getting employment. It prevented me from maintaining jobs.
I've lost a lot of good friends due to stigma.
Stigma made me hide my truth and who I really am.
It kept me feeling isolated and just resulted in more loneliness and more opportunity for the illness to continue rather than get better.
Stigma for me made it very difficult to even access services when I first experienced mental illness.
Stigma has made me feel more alone and like I couldn't connect with anyone.
Thank you for taking this time to educate yourselves and learn more.
I appreciate anybody who opens their mind and heart to learning more about mental illness and taking the power away from stigma.
And without your help, we can't completely eradicate the discrimination that people living with mental illness and their family members experience.
I really want to thank you for taking an interest in this and doing this activity, and I hope that that will help others to experience less of that stigma.
I really appreciate that you are taking the time to look within yourself and to think about how stigma does affect someone with a mental illness and how you can help be a part of a solution towards making it easier for someone to access the help that they need.
I really appreciate you taking the first step to end this stigma.
Thank you for reflecting on the impact of stigma.
I want to thank you for making it so that anyone else doesn't have to feel alone and that they know that someone cares for them.
Yeah. So, it ends with hope, right? There's a lot of hope. It's treatable. People don't have to have poor quality of life. People don't have to die. No. Mm-mm. So let's end in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you again for the Logchurch and Jill specifically for inviting me today. And if even one person in this room was helped by hearing us talk more about mental health, then the blessing is there. Help this program to grow, Lord. Make it okay as a wonderful program. And I really pray that this spreads throughout central Minnesota. It started right before COVID, and then we were shut down. And so I just pray that you, Lord, will spread it and use us. Use us, and we're grateful for this day, Lord. And we love you so much. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. I will be at the back for any questions that people might have, okay? And I just want to thank you all for being here. And as you can see, God has placed on my heart to talk about mental health. I've been doing it for over a decade. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to just keep doing it.